Welcome to Under Baobab Skies. Before the desert truly wakes, there is a Husha moment of stillness just after the deepest dark. A thin, delicate veil of mist rises from the great Nile, and for a breath the world feels soft again, forgiving. But this is the moment the builders begin their prayers. They are men and women who will never see their own names carved in stone, who will never be remembered in the scrolls of kings. They stand barefoot in the cool, dark silt at the river's edge, their voices rising in a murmur, calling to gods older than memory itself. The work begins with the mud. Hands, still stiff from the chill of the night, dip into the rich, dark mixture. It's a simple recipe, yet it holds the weight of an empire. Nile clay, river water, chopped straw, and the salt of human sweat. They press this raw earth into heavy wooden molds, one after another, turning the very skin of the land into the bones of eternity. Each brick is a single, solid thought, a single, solid prayer. The air is quiet, punctuated only by the wet slap of clay against wood. The overseer moves through the rows of workers, his shadow long in the pre-dawn light. He counts each shape as it's turned out to dry. Every brick is a promise made to a pharaoh, and every promise is heavier than it looks. Some of the workers begin to hum softly, almost unconsciously, to keep a rhythm. They are old river songs, melodies that speak of the annual flood and the harvest of life and of loss. Others work in a profound silence, their thoughts drifting miles away, back to homes and families they see only in their dreams. By the time the sun finally breaks over the horizon, casting its first brilliant rays across the water, the sound of creation fills the air. It's not the clang of a smith's hammer or the chisel of a sculptor. It's the sound of thousands of palms slapping clay, thousands of lives caught in one single, unified rhythm. And as the sun climbs higher, its heat begins to press down. No longer a gentle warmth, but a crushing weight, like a golden crown far too heavy for mortal heads. At midday, the desert becomes a mirror. The light is blinding, reflecting off the sand, the water, and the pale limestone in the distance. The very air seems to hum with a tense, shimmering exhaustion. This is the hardest part of the day. This is when the laborers sing. They don't sing for joy, and they don't sing for the overseers. They sing for survival. Their songs are a shield against the oppressive heat and the crushing monotony. Their voices rise together, a raw, powerful chorus that pushes back against the silence of the dunes. These hymns are not meant for the ears of their masters. They are meant for the ancestors. They sing to the ones who crossed these same deserts before them, the ones who built the first simple shrines when the world was still raw and new. Their song is a thread connecting them to a lineage of struggle and endurance. It's a declaration that they are still here, still breathing, still building. Among them is a man named Mena. He is not a hero, not a leader, just one man among thousands. His back has learned the harsh language of burden, etched with lines of toil like a clay tablet. He works not for coin, not for glory, but for the tiny, invisible piece of forever that he believes lives inside every single brick he lifts. He's building a tomb for a god king, but in his heart he is building something for himself, something that will outlast him. He remembers his mother's voice, a soft whisper from his childhood, saying, "Every grain of sand listens." And so, he speaks to the sand with his breath. Each exhale is a quiet story of his endurance, a silent prayer for his children, a memory of a face he loves. He doesn't need to shout. The desert hears him. Then, one of his brothers, a man working just a few feet away, falls. He crumples to the ground, heat-struck, silent. Mena looks away. Not out of cruelty, not out of indifference, but because to stop is to die twice. To stop is to break the rhythm that keeps them all alive. To stop is to admit that the sun can win. And so the work continues, the rhythm unbroken, the song faltering only for a moment before swelling again to fill the space the fallen man left behind. By the river, a line of women brings jars of water. Their movements are graceful, practiced, like a silent, flowing dance. They do not speak. They move like walking prayers, quiet, necessary, eternal. Their presence is as vital as the water they carry. They are the lifeblood that allows this impossible task to continue. Their silent strength a counterpoint to the men's loud hymns. This is how civilization truly breathes, not through the decrees of kings or the plans of architects, but through calloused hands that never, ever stop moving. When dusk finally comes, it arrives like an act of mercy. The ferocious sun softens into a gentle, forgiving glow. The shadows, which had shrunk to nothing at noon, now lengthen into forgiveness, stretching across the sand like cool hands. The day's labor is done. The workers sit by small, crackling fires, their laughter faint, their bodies trembling with a profound relief that is almost painful. Mena walks to the river's edge and dips his hands into the cool, flowing water. He watches the mud and grime of the day swirl away from his skin, a daily confession rinsed clean by the Nile. He has built 1,000 bricks today. He has seen death in the dust and still found a kind of beauty in the golden glow of the water at sunset. He looks across the horizon to the monumental shape of the pyramid rising against the darkening sky. Its peak catches the last fire of the sun, glowing as if it holds a star within. He wonders if the gods truly live in the heavens, among the distant stars, or if they sleep inside the stones that men build for them. Perhaps, by building a house for a god, they are bringing that god down to earth, giving divinity a home among mortals. When the first stars arrive, they do not twinkle. Here, in the clear desert air, they stare. They are bright, unblinking eyes looking down on Mena, and all his brothers, tiny human sparks, reflected in the dark mirror of the Nile. For a moment, the world is perfectly still, the builders below and the gods above, held together in a silent, watchful embrace. Tomorrow, the sun will rise again. The same work will begin. The same rhythm will take hold. The same song will be sung. And though no one will ever carve Mena's name into the walls of this great tomb, his story will remain. It will be carried in the breath of the desert, in the silence between the winds, and in the enduring strength of the stones he helped to place. Because eternity is not built by kings. It is built by the nameless. I am the Nile, and I remember them all. I remember the men who sang before the sun broke the horizon, their voices a low hum against the chorus of waking birds. I remember the women who mixed clay and straw, their hands raw, their fingers bleeding into the very earth they shaped. I remember the children, their small shoulders burdened by baskets heavier than their own dreams. Their laughter a fleeting echo in the vastness of the desert. They called me mother, for I was the source of everything. I gave them water to drink and mud to build with. I was their lifeblood and their heaviest burden. Each year, my floodwaters would rise, a dark, fertile promise that washed over the parched land. In that dark water, they saw hope reborn. The silt I left behind was a blanket of new life for their crops. But I was also the great tester. When my waters receded too far and the land cracked under the relentless sun, their prayers grew desperate. I heard every whispered plea, every cry of despair. I tested their faith, their resilience, their very will to survive. And then came the orders from on high. The pharaohs, who called themselves gods on earth, decided to move mountains, to build monuments that would scrape the sky and defy eternity. They spoke to the gods, but it was these children of the river, my children, who answered the call. It was their hands, their sweat, their lives that would obey the divine command. They were the ones who would turn a pharaoh's dream into stone. These builders, these countless souls, were not slaves in the way you might imagine, shackled in iron chains and driven by the whip alone. No, their bonds were more complex, more deeply woven into the fabric of their lives. They were bound by duty to their king and their country. They were bound by debts, both real and inherited, that could only be paid through labor. And towering over all of it was the long, imposing shadow of the gods. To build a tomb for the pharaoh was to serve the divine order, to ensure the continuity of the cosmos itself. This belief was a chain stronger than any metal. From my banks, I watched them. I watched as they quarried and lifted stones the size of royal chariots, stones that seemed to defy gravity. Their movements were a slow, painful dance of leverage and brute force. To power their work, they chanted. The sound rolled across my waters, a rhythmic, guttural plea that echoed from the cliffs. O Ra, give us strength. O Ra, give us breath for just one more hour. Their voices blended with the grating of stone on stone, the snap of fraying ropes, the shouts of the overseers. It was the soundtrack of creation. Many did not survive. The sun, the weight, the sheer exhaustion claimed them. Some fell right where they stood, their last breath a sigh of dust. Their bodies, spent and broken, were often returned to me. They slipped back into my mud, into the very substance they had fought to control. I cradled them in my currents, carrying them gently downstream. I washed them past the swaying reeds and the silent, watchful fish. I gave them a final, quiet resting place. Their anonymity a stark contrast to the eternal name they were building for their king. They became part of my eternal flow, their stories dissolving into my silence. But so many more endured. They survived the heat, the hunger, the crushing labor. Day after day, year after year, they pushed, they pulled, they carved. They built temples so grand they seemed to be homes for the sun itself. They hollowed out tombs in the rock, intricate underground palaces for the dead. They were so focused on the task, on the stone in front of them, that they never realized they were doing more than just building. They were carving themselves into time. They were etching their own existence onto the pages of history. Every chisel mark left on a column, every smooth surface polished to a gleam, every massive block set perfectly in place, each one was a fingerprint they left upon the skin of the world. And I felt it all. Now, thousands of years have passed. The world has changed in ways those builders could never have imagined. Today, different kinds of boats float upon my surface. Tourists drift along my currents, their cameras clicking, their voices a babble of languages from across the globe. They point at the magnificent ruins that line my shores, trying to pronounce names of pharaohs and queens that feel foreign on their tongues. They talk of genius and artistry. They marvel at the gold, the gods, the grand scale of it all. They speak of Ramses, of Tutankhamun, of Cleopatra. They speak of the masterminds, the powerful, the few whose names were saved. But they do not speak of the ones who mixed the mud. They do not speak of the thousands who hauled the stones. But I do. I remember, I hold their stories in my depths. For me, they are not forgotten. Every ripple that laps against the shore carries the echo of their work chants. Every sunrise that bathes the temples in golden light still seems to glow with the memory of their sweat. And when night falls, a deep, velvet silence descends upon the stones they raised. If you listen closely, if you truly listen past the sounds of the modern world, you can almost hear them. You can hear the soft whisper of 1,000 forgotten breaths. So, the next time you look at a photograph of the pyramids, or stand in the shadow of the great temples at Karnak or Luxor, I want you to remember this. Remember that these magnificent structures were not willed into existence by gods or kings alone. They were born from water. They were born from the mud of my banks and the sweat of human brows. And one day, when the wind and the sand have had their way, they will return to dust, and that dust will be carried back to me. They will return to the water from which they came, and I, the Nile, will be here to receive them. I will remember them all forever. Before dawn, they gathered, a silent congregation facing east. The horizon, a fine line of gold, promised a birth. They bowed their heads, not in supplication, but in a quiet pact with Ra, the eternal sun. They believed that with his inevitable rise, their hearts would be weighed, their souls scoured, and their purpose renewed. In that first, pure light, the world appeared clean, washed of its hardships. Even the vast, unforgiving desert seemed to inhale, to breathe again. A collective whisper, more a thought than a sound, moved through them. Let today be lighter than yesterday. It was a hope, a prayer, a quiet defiance against the crushing weight they knew was coming. And then, as the first ray of sun touched the land, the hammers began. The sound of stone striking stone, a rhythm that would define their existence. As the day burned, as the sun climbed to its zenith and beat down without mercy, the line between worship and work simply disappeared. It dissolved into the shimmering heat. Sweat, streaming down their faces and backs, became holy water, an offering. The occasional drop of blood from a cut or a scrape was incense, its metallic scent rising to the heavens. The relentless clang of stone against stone transformed from a sound of labor into the temple's first hymn, a chorus of human endurance. Each man carried more than just immense weight on his shoulders. He carried faith, a profound, unshakable belief that Ra was watching, that their struggle was seen, that their perseverance was, in itself, a form of prayer. To endure was to be devout. But faith is a complex thing. Some doubted, some, in moments of extreme pain or frustration, cursed the gods aloud. Their angry voices swallowed whole by the endless sand. Yet, even this doubt, this questioning, was sacred here. Because to question, to feel the sharp sting of anger or despair, was to feel alive. And in a world so fixated on preparing for the afterlife, in a monumental project built for the dead, feeling alive was the greatest act of defiance. It was a declaration that their lives, right here, right now, mattered. The physical trial was relentless. The sun was a furnace, baking the very air they breathed. The stones they moved were mountains in miniature, each one a test of muscle, bone, and will. The world around them shimmered, reality itself seeming to bend in the heat. A mirage would ripple on the horizon, a phantom lake promising relief that would never come. Their bodies ached, muscles screamed, but they pushed on. They had to. This wasn't just a job. It was a cosmic duty. They were not merely building a tomb. They were constructing a stairway to the stars, a monument that would anchor their civilization in eternity. Their individual pain was a small price for that collective immortality. Every block they hewed, every ramp they built, was a verse in an epic poem written in stone and sweat. When darkness finally fell, bringing a cool, gentle reprieve, the same men who had worshipped the rising sun now turned their weary eyes to the stars. They saw them not as distant fires, but as Ra's silent brothers, a celestial family watching over the sleeping world. They held a deep belief that each star was a soul that had passed the test of life, a heart that had been weighed against the feather of Mat, the feather of truth, and found to be lighter. The night sky was a testament to successful journeys, a map of ascended souls. They sat by small, crackling fires, their exhausted bodies casting long shadows. Laughter, when it came, was quiet, subdued. A shared joke, a moment of camaraderie, was a precious balm on their fatigued spirits. Their bodies shook, not from cold, but from the day's profound exertion. Yet, within this bone-deep exhaustion, there was a strange and profound peace. They had survived another day in the god's furnace. They had met the challenge and endured. An elder, his face a roadmap of countless sunrises, spoke softly, his voice barely rising above the crackle of the fire. "The sun will judge us again tomorrow," he said. "Sleep as if you have earned it." And they did. They collapsed onto their mats, their rest deep and absolute. The fire popped and hissed, sending embers into the dark. The great river, the lifeblood of their land, hummed a low, constant lullaby nearby. And the desert, that vast, silent cathedral of sand and stars, listened without a sound, holding their dreams and their weariness in its immense embrace. When dawn came once more, a fresh promise painted across the sky, they rose. They rose without complaint, without a word of protest. The aches were still there. The fatigue lingered in their bones, but they rose. Because in their hearts, they understood. Every single grain of sand that clung to their skin, every callus on their hands, was a reminder. They were part of something that would outlive them all. They were part of a story that would be told for thousands of years. To build was to pray. To endure was to believe. To work, to sweat, and finally, to rest beneath the watchful eye of Ra, was to know eternity intimately. Not as an abstract concept, but as a felt, experienced through pain, through devotion, and through the unrelenting, life-giving light. The story of these builders is a testament to the human spirit's capacity for faith, endurance, and creation. Their legacy is not just in the colossal structures they left behind, but in the echoes of their daily struggle and their unyielding belief. This was just a small glimpse into their world. To truly understand their journey, their sacrifices, and their incredible achievements, watch our full 2-hour documentary, where we delve deeper into the lives of the people who built eternity. Thank you for watching.